yeah, it's like it's always nice to like go home and have like a little, I call it like a little northern break because I go home and I want to escape London, which is actually really nice to have that
I
option.
love that. Yeah. That should be like on the, I don't know, the Northern Tourist Board or
Yeah,
something. Like that
come for a northern
catchphrase.
escape.
Yeah. Go have a northern break.
Yeah, come have a pie.
Come have a pie and you'll feel right as rain.
Exactly.
Who doesn't feel good after a pie, to
I
be
know.
fair? All right, a little like honest disclosure. When I first moved to this country, I was calling pasties for about 6 months before someone finally corrected me.
You were like, and Greg's like, "Can I have a pasty?" And then the counter,
Yeah.
it's like, "What'd you call me?"
Yeah, exactly. And because I would be ordering, and then the people they would behind the counter would never correct me. They would always just like smile to themselves, because they've had a hard day.
Yeah.
And that for them, seeing me walk up and being like, "Can I have a pasty?" is like the best part of their day. And I know as soon as I'm gone, they're like, "Did you hear that? What he called it?" And it was only when I finally said it to a friend, I was like, "Yo, the pasties you have over here are amazing." And he was like, "The what?" And I finally figured out, and I was like, "Oh man, that for ages."
That's so funny.
So pretty embarrassing. Let me introduce you properly. I'll introduce you to the audience, and we'll just jump in if that's all right.
Great, yeah.
Sweet. Do you have a time you got to go by?
No, all yours.
All right, sweet as. All right, nice one. Hello, lovely dance people, and welcome to David's Dance Podcast. I'm your host, David Evans. This week on the podcast, we have an amazing dancer. He's currently movement directing a play that will debut at Brighton Fringe Festival. He's had a really great kick-off career. Like, he's done so well. He's worked with some amazing choreographers as part of his work with BalletBoyz, and he's currently going to be in the Sadler's Wells Wildcard with Christopher Mathews' work that kind of delves into dialogues around the body and the kind of politics of the body and kind of exploring that through really kind of performative dance. What I really love about this dancer that we have today is I think he has a really interesting quality in his movement in that he finds just extremes. Extremes both in sort of the full breadth of a movement and the kind of most expressive, most erratic, most kind of out there kind of movements, but also even in the small details. And I think he brings a real kind of embodied presence to his dancing, where a real kind of proprioceptive awareness, where you really feel him dancing in his whole body. And I think it brings a real particularly unique quality to his dancing. And we're just so lucky to have him here on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Ben Knapper. Ben, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you here, man. I'm so glad that you're able to take some time on a Saturday to have a chin wag.
What a lovely introduction, making me blush.
I'll edit some blush emojis in later. No, it's great to have you here, man. I wanted to kind of jump in and kind of ask you actually a little bit about your experience with BalletBoyz. And you've worked with quite a few different choreographers throughout working with the company. You came to work for the company quite soon after graduating, and there's often new challenges and a real growth period that happens when you move from training to working with a company. And I wanted to ask you, was there any kind of choreographer or any piece in particular that not necessarily that you enjoyed the most, but that you felt that you grew the most with, that you felt like kind of helped you arrive into the professional space maybe, or kind of just grow as a dancer? I know we do that with sort of all works in different ways, but is there any piece that stands out for you that was like, oh wow, that helped take me forward in a new way?
I think the one that sticks out, I've got two that kind of stick out most in my mind. The first one is a piece called Young Men by Ivan Perez.
Mm.
And that was both performed as a stage show, and there's also the film version. And the version I did kind of combined that both versions of that to make kind of a stage work with the film behind us playing different scenes. And that's performed at Wilkins Music Hall in 2018, I think. But I really, really enjoyed that work, and I think it really pushed me to kind of dance with emotion, if that doesn't sound too cheesy. But I kind of played the role of this young soldier who suffers from shell shock, and I did this kind of really big climatic scene and duet, and that's really, really kind of.
And the theme of the piece explores it's around soldiers, the whole piece, isn't it?
Yeah, about kind of like these kind of young men basically who are kind of just like thrust and kind of into this war, into all this conflict, and all the consequences of this, physically and mentally, really. And it was kind of the first work where I kind of really had to delve into the theme of a piece and really kind of understand why it was that I was dancing, rather than kind of just like doing the steps in a way. Really kind of understanding the story and kind of portraying kind of, what kind of my expression on this subject. And I really, really, really grew from that. It really kind of switched some kind of artistic switch in me, really, and kind of really made me interested in that, in being emotive and really dancing with expression.
There's a lot of different ways to kind of approach kind of emotion in dance. Kind of wondering how for that was incorporated into the process. Was it through working on the character? Was it about working with images, or kind of was it about relating it to your own experiences? How did you find your kind of emotional kind of entryway into the piece?
For me, it was a bit of everything. I kind of had to like draw from different sources. So I kind of had to do my own research about kind of this state of shell shock and kind of translate that onto my own body. I also kind of relating it back to kind of really uncomfortable moments in my life, kind of trying to bring those emotions back, and kind of also then translating that into my body, and kind of drawing from all these different places of either kind of written sources, images, movies, and then kind of taking as much information I can and kind of turning that into energy. That makes sense.
So it's a very, very eclectic approach.
I kind of wanted to make it very individual to me, and not kind of recreate something, but kind of just translate it onto myself, as if it was happening to me, because I think that would be the most honest way to present it. In my opinion.
And then how does that all, you feel like, consolidate into movements? And do you feel like there's I think there's like when I've done like emotional work in the past, like sometimes I found to discover it, I had to go to that emotional place. But then once that affected or changed the form of the choreography, in order to do the choreography over and over without being like emotionally exhausted, I had to find the way that the emotion shaped the choreography, and then I could stay with the shape and not always have to bring the whole of my soul to bear, like, and just be like emotionally drained by every performance, in what way do you find the emotions then kind of change the way that you dance, and then how do you kind of consolidate that into a performance?
I think it's always that tricky aspect as well of what you say. You can't really be emotionally drained and burr all every single time, but you kind of have to work with what emotional state you're working with at the time,
right?
And not kind of compare them each performance. I think is also really interesting. It's like some nights may be a bit more raw than the previous night, but it doesn't necessarily mean that was better or worse. It's just like a different emotional state, and I think that's something I had to learn as well throughout this piece, as we on stage. And sometimes my back would be absolutely killing from doing side shows. So I wouldn't go to the extremes in the movement, but it would kind of working with that kind of lower intensity, but making it still really impactful. If that answers your question. Yeah,
It
it was
does,
quite
because
a tricky
it's
one.
bringing a certain, it's not just like, this is the emotion, I'm going to do it now. It's having the awareness to be like, actually, you know, where am I emotionally? Where am I physically? That, you know, where will my current state of mind and my current, you know, body state allow me to actually go, you know? So it's having the self-awareness so that you can actually go to those places sort of safely in a way.
Yeah. It's also coming to like a place of honesty, because if you're not in that emotional place and then you're trying to really push this raw emotional energy out, then it comes across, there's kind of a block in some way, because it's not being totally honest in what you're kind of presenting. Whereas if it kind of, you kind of subtly go with the energy you feel with inside yourself, then you're kind of probably going to portray a more honest and maybe a bit more of emotional performance, because you're not forcing it or not trying to act a character in a way, but you're kind of just being yourself in this state.
Less about like pushing something out and more about tapping into what's already there.
Yeah, that's something I really learned during that piece as well. Kind of not, because I think I've always really enjoyed performing, but I think it really kind of made me a bit more of an intellectual performer in a way that I didn't feel like I had to constantly be presenting the same version every single night for it to look good. It was actually like so much more of like every night was individual, every night was different, with different energies, different emotions, different steps, but it was all the same piece every night, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing because a lot of these kind of growth things are often, they're invisible or they're not really talked about, you know, especially in relation to kind of dance training. And, you know, for other dancers as well on the outside watching, when we watch ourselves and we watch other dancers grow, so much of what we see is the external performance. They're like, oh, you know, they picked up that technique. Oh, they have more clarity here. They refine this, you know, the physical aspect of the performance. And, you know, when we're training, that is a very large part, you know, there is some aspects of this kind of emotional kind of things, but, you know, we are trained as dancers. We're not necessarily trained as actors. And so there is this kind of thing where that is the emphasis, and that is where you see the growth, and that is where your growth is tested. So and then you leave, and then you have a choreographer and they're like, hey, let's tackle this really difficult subject, and you're like, oh, okay. You know.
I just had a big sandwich for my lunch. I'm quite full. Let's take it down a notch maybe for the first hour.
I find that hard to be really sad after I've had a big sandwich.
Exactly.
So I think it's really wonderful that you touch on that, because it is often these are the ways in which we grow as dancers that often aren't so visible to others, but are incredibly important. And it's often this sort of kind of soft skills that kind of do manifest themselves in the dancing. And when you see certain dancers give a performance, you know, it's not that the technique's better, but somehow the presence or the performance is at a higher level, or is more articulate in a kind of emotional, performative way, or more performatively specific, in a way that it does feel developed. Hello, listeners. David here. If you're enjoying the podcast, hit the like and subscribe button for more content, and hit us up in the comments section. Let us know what you think about the podcast and the issues being discussed, and ask us questions that you'd like to hear about on future podcasts, and maybe put in some requests. Are there any dance artists that you want us to have on the podcast? Tag them in the post. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Now back to the podcast.
Definitely. Going back to your original question about the works, I think there's another work as well which kind of really helped me kind of develop on the same idea. And that was a duet called Us by Christopher Wheeldon. And that originally premiered in 14 Days program with BalletBoyz, but was brought back for the Them and Us program and extended. Because it originally was a duet.
Could you give like a brief description of the work for those who might not be familiar?
Yeah, sure. So Christopher Wheeldon kind of choreographed this work called Us, which is basically was originally a duet between two men. It's quite a very emotive duet, a lot of contact work, and a lot of breadth of movement. And then he decided to extend the work into from like a 10-minute duet into like a half an hour piece, bringing in other cast members. So it was like a big ensemble number, kind of with the same kind of language of movement, that ballet vocabulary from Christopher Wheeldon, but extending the idea. And then the dancers leave, and then there's a little solo moment that happens, and then someone else comes on, and this duet that we've already seen before, that's been another program, starts, and then it finishes, and it's like a really lovely, beautiful end to the piece. So I was lucky enough to kind of be one of the dancers to perform the duet when we took it to the West End, I think a few years ago in the summer. And yeah, that was one piece that really kind of, I think, changed my dancing, because I've never ever done like I think a 10-minute kind of duet with someone else of really kind of high intensity lifting, breadth of movement, very like raw and emotional. And I think that really also really switched my way of learning things as well, because I couldn't just kind of rely on myself to be like, and now I do this, and now I do this, and now I do this. And it's like kind of, you have to really react to kind of what's happening on the night.
Yeah.
And I think kind of similar to the way with the young men piece, it was that going with the energy on the night to create something so specific for that night. But I think that's what makes it really, really beautiful. And
that's really interesting what you say about like the kind of the going with it. There's a really interesting, I mean, some of my favorite like pieces and processes often do start as a duet, because I think it's such a great place to start choreography, because it allows you to really tap into like a really simple emotional story and connection, and build something really solid in that kind of, in the relational aspect of the dancing, that then can be kind of not duplicated, but kind of extrapolated on, can be like, you know, teased out kind of further, but it gives you like a really kind of intense kind of microcosm to really kind of make it work and make it happen and develop something that can then spill over into other things.
Definitely.
And there's a real kind of like, you know, I think creatively there's a real kind of like choreographic, I don't know what you'd call it, like virtue to creating processes that allow you to just go in and go deeper, and then wait for it to spill over into other things, rather just being like, oh, that's something we have now, let's put it with this, but actually it allows you to stick and go deep in order to then go wide.
Definitely. So that's, it's a really nice way of putting it. It's kind of it's kind of a bit like striking till you find gold in a way. But it's kind of just digging, and then eventually you find something, and then you can take that kind of anywhere. You kind of, I think it's like that when you learn the skill as well, and once you've got the ability to do that, both as a choreographer and a performer, it's really, really special. It's always going to connect with people.
And I like what you're saying about this thing of in the duet, how it changed the way that you learn the dance, because you can't wait and be like, oh, hold on, what's that next? Like, you can't have to go with it. That pause. You got to just kind of go with the momentum. You know, is the ways in which, you know, working with the company has changed the way that you learn dance, or you know, whether it's through sort of elements like this or in other ways, or just, you know, contrasting with your training is the way that you pick up material different now.
I think I think at Rambo I was always very like, we all had a lot of versatile styles and teachers a lot of the time, but I think especially moving on to BalletBoyz, you know, you're doing completely different works of rep. You know, one minute I'm like balancing on a seesaw, and the next I'm like swinging off a cube. It's like, you can't really get prepared for things like that. You kind of just learn as you go. And that's one thing BalletBoyz really taught me, is kind of just to kind of pick up very versatile repertoire, really.
Just going for it, basically.
So So yeah, just go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, I think, that's our part of the company as well. It's very much like that. That's who can swing off this cube the height. So we'll put that
in. Right. Very
like stuck in, very stuck in, get stuck in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. It's very like pragmatic attitude of just like, yeah, let's do it, and oh, that works, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also I think there's a certain kind of like male competitive energy as well to that, and like I think a kind of certain getting stuck in. Like I do remember like one of my ballet teachers really appreciating the guys in the class, just in the sense that they would just jump into it, and that we were often pushing each other in like a really positive way. But
yeah, it's like a brotherhood in a way. Like I think all the guys in the company at BalletBoyz, we were just like all brothers, and we were kind of like just elbow nudge kind of all the time.
Yeah.
It's really fun, really nice environment.
And it's just taking this like collective physical energy and like finding a way to like channel it in a way.
Yeah, definitely. Really
and
fun.
as a choreographer, that's like that's what you want. You want people to be like up for things and to just be like, yeah, I'll give that a go. You know, it doesn't work when people are a little bit like, oh, I didn't really train for that, or I'm, you know, a bit hesitant. You're just people have, you know, you just got to go for it, and it might look, you know, ugly as, but you just gotta do it, you know. Because I think it's part of that trust as well that you build with a choreographer, and that allows them to really go, you know, deep into a process. Is there, you know, other things that you've taken away from that experience as a whole that you've now taken into your own, you know, the movement directing that you're doing, your own choreography?
Yeah, so I think something I'm really looking forward to is kind of using my experience as kind of a dancer and all my kind of time doing these kind of really raw and emotional works, and bringing that perspective into working with actors. I'm really, really excited about that. It's something very new for me. It's something I've not done before, so I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing how that goes, and whether that I learn anything different from it, and whether it makes me reflect on things that I've already done and think, oh, actually, I wish I would have done it like this, or actually looking back at it now, I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
Awesome. And is this your first time doing something like this, movement directing for actors?
Yeah, definitely. It's not my first kind of time doing this. Also a really nice job to be doing after kind of a bit of a break with the pandemic and stuff. A really nice thing to get really stuck into and really kind of explore, which I'm very excited about.
And it's quite a different way into movement as well, taking this approach. What are sort of the tools or processes that you've been doing? Because it might be helpful actually just to describe what a movement director is and how that's different to choreography.
Yeah, so I think for me the main difference is that you're kind of not going in there to set anything specific. So it's not kind of, and we have a 1, 2, 3, 4. It's more kind of offering this information to kind of get a more kind of honest reaction in the body, to set a movement, and kind of how would this character move and why would they move like that, because they feel like this. There's a maybe not more thought behind it, because obviously there's lots of thought gone into choreography, but it's less kind of goes in with less of maybe of a set intention, or how to put it, or
it's more exploratory. It's more like for the actors to explore.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with them not being 100% dancers either. I think obviously they will have, I think they do have dance experience, but not being like a company dancers, working with different steps and different stages and different tasks, which is really fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of just still in the midst of kind of getting everything together for that, and
Yeah.
being in the studio and thinking, what do I want to do? How do I want to do this?
So what are we doing, Ben? And that is a great question. What are we doing?
Yeah, everyone take a walk around the room.
Yeah. Well, I figure out what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no. I am really, really excited. I think it's definitely gonna push me and kind of really utilize the energy I've learned so far, the information I've learned so far.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And so for that, have you worked on like developing the character through movement? Have you done things of like, how to structure how I forget what it's called, but like where the characters are positioned on stage and how they, like, have you engaged with those sort of different elements?
Yeah. So I was brought onto the project quite late. I think I've missed the short round of R&D. So we actually only start rehearsals next week.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in the mix of right now. My kind of process at the moment is kind of reading the script and also kind of really getting familiar with the characters.
Yeah.
Getting inside their story from their perspectives, and kind of being in the studio by myself and kind of putting myself in their shoes and seeing how I would feel, like what kind of energy, what kind of posture they may adapt, what kind of tempo they might move at, and also working closely with the dialogue as well to kind of see kind of the stilts and the flow in it as well, to kind of take inspiration for that for movement. I think as well would be really nice.
So it's kind of using the dialogue as like a music score in a way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's a really cool idea. And looking at kind of the more emotional aspects of the play, and kind of this weighted, heavy feeling into movement is my kind of initial kind of journey into it at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think those elements that you mentioned of what was it, energy, tempo, there was something else as well. It's like those kind of transferable skills basically from dance, and it's the sort of those kind of languages that work for music, but then can be transferred into kind of visual rhythms, or kind of visual energies, etc., visual patterns that can really help bring a character alive. And it's amazing how I've been thinking about this a little bit watching some acting recently, where actors will sometimes really like gesture what they're talking about in a way that you would like never do in real life. They
really talk with the hands.
Yeah, exactly. Really talk with your hands. Like what I was watching that film Lucky Logan the other day, and there's a bit in it where Channing Tatum goes, yeah, he went and broke his thumbs, and he holds up his thumb like this, and as if to be like, this is what a thumb is. Like, and it's funny thing because it's like when you like, we watch a lot of things like that. It's interesting the ways in which these things can be so integrated, and it's not like naturalistic, but it works. It really works because it brings because it articulates the character and like or the story or the dialogue in a certain way that brings it to life.
Yeah, definitely. It's really fun. I love character work. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I think kind of discovering all different aspects and kind of thoughts of a character is very exciting to me. I really love it.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'll say we worked, go back to some work with the BalletBoyz. We worked before the pandemic. We were touring with a program called The Looks, and one of the pieces in that was choreographed by Maxine Doyle, who's director of Punch Drunk, and the work was called Bradley 418, and it was kind of, we all played the same character of this man, but we all played very different sides and personalities to him.
Yeah.
And I found that really, really interesting to get into, that we all had this version of him, and we all kind of had this character that was at the end of the same person, but all completely different. And I think the learning how to kind of get into this character and think like them is actually quite difficult, but it's really, really fun to do on stage. Really, it's kind of fun to leave yourself as you walk on stage. You kind of leave yourself at the wings and you kind of come on and you're someone different. And I think as a dancer, we don't always have the opportunity to do that in some work. So it's really fun to actually be able to do that. And I'm excited to kind of going forward with the play is kind of work on that as well a little bit.
Yeah.
With these actors.
I thought your performance for for Bradley 418 was incredible, and you were really, you were really in it. You know, it was there was a real kind of commitment to the moment in a way that was really so much. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm watching dance now. It really was like a performance, and amazing to see all. Really, like, it was, I mean, the whole piece is kind of like a very erratic, insecure masculinity, and those kind of like those kind of it was a great take on masculinity in a way, and on this character, because I think it dealt with all the kind of actually some of the, like, you know, neuroticism behind, you know, for men, that's behind the kind of bravado. And so it's this, the whole piece is this kind of like weird mixture of this kind of, you know, kind of anxiety playing itself out, but then also this like very physical, very like, you know, laddie bravado, and the ways in which those things like kind of, you know, tic tac back and forth.
It's like the kind of, you have the form and then the shadow of it, and that the relationship was like, it was a really interesting rehearsal process to really get into kind of finding that as well. It took some real time, but no, it was really fun to do on stage. I really enjoyed that.
It really came across in your performance. Are there things that you've come across in your current process with the movement direction that you felt, or, you know, or maybe in your process with Bradley, or these kind of other kind of emotional content kind of workings out that you've gotten stuck, and that you're like, wow, how do I figure this out, you know? And then how did you figure out how to move on beyond that?
I think like all the time, there's always time to get stuck. All the time, every other day, it's literally like, oh, now what do I do? So I kind of, and I think the best kind of example maybe, I don't know, I feel like in the studio with the Bradley 18, for example, kind of being in the studio, kind of making a solo, then not automatically like going into what you know is also really hard, and really trying to break habits.
Right.
Is like, because I think
movement habits of going to certain movement types or phrases.
Because I think for me especially, is like, if I get stuck, I would definitely have at least 7 moves I'll just bash out of my internal repertoire if I'm in trouble. And it's like, actually, well, no, I don't think this character
pose,
there's something this character would like move that way, in a sense.
Right.
So and it's kind of that, and even with kind of movement directing or thinking about this process, it's kind of, I need to always kind of relate it back to kind of the idea as at hand, and kind of not really go off on a tangent with my own kind of movement, and kind of really bring it back to actually what we need to do. But I think it's always kind of refreshing to kind of just switch up the energy if it gets stuck. You know, if I feel stuck, I'm just like, let's move on to something else, come back to that another time. Or if I'm on the tube home or something, like, I've got an idea about that now that I didn't have before in the studio. I'll go back to that at a later date. I think it's always good to not be afraid to leave things if they're not working and come back to them. I think is really helpful. And that's something we did many times at BalletBoyz in the studio if something wasn't working. So I was like, okay, let's leave it through another day, because especially when we were making the work then, that was a piece that was made by the BalletBoyz company. So it was all of us dancers and the rehearsal director and the directors in the studio making a piece. So you have 7-8 people trying to choreograph this one piece. So there's definitely times in that as well that taught me to be like, this isn't working, let's come back to that on Tuesday. Because and I think that's something I've learned, just to kind of leave it at the door and then come in with a new energy and new ideas the next day.
Because, you know, not beating a dead horse, but leave the horse alone. It might it might have just been sleeping, you know. It might get up tomorrow. But there's definitely a thing, you know, I'm reading a book about sleep at the minute, and it really highlights the ways in which, you know, our brain, our subconscious brain works on problems while we sleep, and consolidates movement as well. So often, you know, we stop doing something, and then, you know, we sleep on it and wake up, and then we're like, oh, we just have a solution. Or you come, you know, we've done this as well, where you've finished a rehearsal process, and like a particular phrase or whatever, it was just a dumpster fire. Like, it was not going good when you left it. You know, nobody in the room was happy. The choreographer was like, all right, I guess that's where we're leaving it today. And then you come back the following day, and it just kind of works.
It's like, bam, you got it. Yeah,
it's like that, you know, because everybody's been able to just sleep on it, you know, process it all in their bodies, and then come back to it with like a fresh energy.
I find you saying about the sleep and kind of how we solve problems in our sleep. Recently, I've been teaching at the first years at Rumba School, and I've kind of been developing my own practice, kind of making these classes, and then I've been in the middle of that, like, that's a 3 and a 4. That's like kind of going back to my own exercises. No, that should be a 2 or 6. Kind of waking up in the middle of the night answering my own questions. So I kind of found that really interesting to hear.
Gotta leave a notebook by the bed.
So,
you know, have these epiphanies, and then be like, oh, what was it? The next day.
Literally. Oh, funny. That's really interesting.
Oh, that's brilliant. Tell me a little bit about this this work that you're doing with Christopher Mathews, and tell us a little about that. What the piece is, and what your role in it is.
So Christopher Mathews, also known as Formed View, is kind of creating this exhibition at Sadler's Wells using the whole building, which is kind of bringing together a lot of artists, taking over the whole of the building, the dressing rooms, studios, stages, and it's kind of, the work that I'm in is called Your Body's Number One, and it kind of
the exhibition as a whole is called Exhibition of the Body. Is that
My
right?
Body is an Exhibition.
My Body is an Exhibition. Thank you.
And kind of looks at the relationship as the body as an object, and also investigating kind of spectatorship. So I've not done any rehearsals. Again, this is something else I was kind of brought into later, I think, as the project expanded after the R&D. So I'm also really looking forward to kind of really delving into it and kind of seeing what it's going to be like. But from what I hear, it's kind of with this exhibition kind of installation, it will be this idea of the audience of my body being kind of really watched and kind of really observed, as I think to stand on this plinth on Sadler's Wells stage and kind of slowly move my body as kind of people come in and out of this kind of exhibition and walk around, kind of really kind of into kind of body politics and kind of this idea of being watched, and this idea of kind of, am I performing or am I just being watched, kind of thing. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be really interesting, and also a really, really cool thing to be happening at Sadler's Wells. Just to kind of go in and walk around and see so many different kind of artists after this time that we've just had. I think it's brilliant.
And to kind of just break out of the confines of, you know, the stage, the audience kind of dynamic into something, you know, I really enjoy in my own work as well, these kind of expositions of dances, like being kind of more sculptural, approaching it more sculpture, you know, as with the idea of, you know, moving on a plinth, and the kind of how different it is to engage with dance in that way, to be able to walk around it, experiencing it in 360 degrees.
More 3D than 2D. Definitely.
As well as, I think it's set these kind of spaces set it up to be more conversational as well. When the lights are on, you can see the audience, they can see you. Also, they can see you seeing them. And that creates a kind of like I don't know, a kind of openness and honesty that I find is really interesting. It's more a dance on a level plane than kind of like, that's the dance over there and here's the audience here that's invisible, kind of.
It's kind of a much more intimate setting. And I think especially with this work, I think it's like a 3-hour work. So
Wow.
it's a long time to kind of be watched.
Yeah.
So it's really going to be interesting. I think I'm going to really learn a lot from it as well. So I'm
Yeah.
super excited to be on board with that. Yeah.
And a lot of Christopher's work is about kind of the gaze as well, and this you know, it's almost as much about the audience as it is about the performer, you know. And by having the audience visible, it puts those kind of those voyeurisms, those gazes, those perspectives, like kind of on display of, you know, actually who is seeing the work, and how are they seeing the work, how are they reacting to the work, how are we receiving it.
There's a lot more subtle communication in a way. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that goes. Great.
Wow. So have you started the process for that yet?
No. So there's an initial R&D, I think before the pandemic, at the time I was with BalletBoyz. So I've kind of been brought onto the project a bit later. So I'll be rehearsing for that in the upcoming weeks. Before the performance, which is on the 25th and 26th of June, I should say. So yeah, if you grab a ticket and come and watch. Come take a stroll around Sadler's Wells.
We'll put it in a link to it all in the description below the podcast, so people can check it out.
Great. Check it out. Put it in the bag.
Yeah, exactly. Straight to checkout. I love that. Tell me a little bit about kind of so how's your experience been, you know, in just these kind of this past year with being, you know, disrupted by COVID? How have you found it moving out of
COVID?
What? The C word. How's it been moving kind of out? And I think really more what I'm interested in now is how are you finding it moving back into dance spaces? Because I think, you know, we've all had enough of the hell, but like I'm kind of interested about that transition back into these kind of live spaces, and the fact that we're doing it now from a different place and as different people. You know, are there things that you've taken away from this last year that you're going to bring into the space, and, you know, what are you looking forward to in a way?
It's so up and down, hasn't it? I mean, I think when the pandemic first hit, we were touring, and then kind of 6 shows into like a 40-odd show tour, and then kind of all was like that. So kind of went from being very, very, very busy to kind of really doing nothing and having that time off. And I think going back into it can be daunting, I think, at first, because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so out of practice. I used to do the 9 to 5 every day, and now it's lucky if I'm in the studio once twice a week, really. So it's trying not to kind of doubt myself in a way that would kind of inhibit myself from kind of doing what I love. I think going back into it, I think the best thing is just to be appreciative of it. I think for myself, more than anything, I'm like, oh, this is what I wanted to do. This is what I love doing. And now I'm doing it again. I think it's always important to come back to that, whether, you know, there's times in the studio at the moment where things are maybe a bit more frustrating than they were at the beginning, because maybe there's a lack of things to do, like contact work, maybe can't really be doing much at the minute, or maybe technique isn't as up to par as it was before the pandemic, or like things like that, or going in is kind of, as I said, quite daunting, but kind of just coming back to this idea that this is what makes us happy. This is why we're here. It's like great to be here. So let's just take that, and that energy will translate for itself, really. I think that's what I'll say on that. But no, getting back into it has been really, really nice. It's kind of, I have a new appreciation for the arts that I kind of always have had, obviously, but never like, oh God, this is like it's really weird how you feel the sense of fulfillment when you've been in the studio. It's so different. And even as a dancer, I've tried to keep fit or go to the gym as much as possible, but like there's nothing beats kind of just being in the studio, and kind of that fulfillment and sense of achievement that comes from that. So yeah, hopefully things will keep going the way they're meant to.
I think you need those moments where, whether it's just going and just jamming for a little bit, or you know, being back in the process, where you know, because there's a lot of difficulty that comes with the kind of industry and with the career. So it's always going back to those things of like just jamming out and just being like, oh yeah, this is like freaking awesome. Like I feel so good when I do this. And I think it's for a lot of dancers, it's just fresh air. Basically, you do it and you're just like, oh, I feel like so much better. Like, you know, and you realize like, oh yeah, that's why we're dancers in the first place. Like, you know, because there's something about the process of dancing that just makes us feel alive, you know. And that sounds like a little bit cheesy, but like, you know, I really genuinely mean it. And you know, and I find for myself, I feel most myself, you know, when I'm dancing. You know, which is so interesting. I find, like, philosophically, that, like, you know, we often so feel most ourselves when we're lost in something that's not ourselves, you know. And it's really, really interesting the way in which kind of engaging with those things actually sort of is a way of coming home.
It's a really nice way to coming home after being at home for
exactly
ages.
After being sat at home on the couch for 12 months, we're like, can't wait to go home.
I think that's also the funniest thing. I think something really kind of scary and daunting as well, going to auditions after this time as well. Then after the auditions, it was like, oh my goodness, like but I think you have to also remember everyone in that room has the exact same build that we've all been in. That's quite funny to catch myself at auditions, like, oh my god, this is mad. Like it's funny.
There's a certain amount of, like, you know, being kind to yourself and just accepting that it's a process. It takes a while to get back up to speed, but having faith as well that, you know, we also have the skills and the ability to get back up to speed. Like, that's really key, you know, and that it's okay to be here, but actually, you know, we have the skill sets to get back there.
It's like trusting yourself.
Exactly.
Just like trusting your abilities and trusting your kind of training and everything. Just trust it.
And all of that. Like, I became a father 6 weeks ago, and
congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And you know, it's been crazy, really, but like, I was dancing wise, I was, you know, in a really great place, you know, just before he arrived. And you know, I felt like there was a lot of aspects of my training and my routine that I was tailoring and really figuring out, and like, oh, like, this really works for me, or this is allowing me to finally have growth and breakthroughs in certain areas. And then, you know, and then he was born, and it's just been absolute madness. You know, and we moved as well. So it's been like a completely crazy couple of months.
Really crazy.
You know, and then I got like injured. And so like dance has been kind of, I've had to put it on a back burner. You know, and I think a lot of coming back to it, although it was like, oh, this is so frustrating, because it was like, you know, I was getting there, and then it felt like a big setback. But it's like, well, actually, you know, I do have the skills now. I did learn those of how to get there. And actually, if I reapply those principles and set up those structures again, you know, and be creative about it, then actually it's having the faith to, you know, help you to be like, actually, I can grow back into that place.
I always feel like it's always kind of in those kind of situations, it's always kind of like you pause something and then you just come back to it later. It's like a movie that you didn't finish the end of it, and then you one day you're like, click play, and it's there. Definitely. I feel like it's always kind of hard to not view it as a setback. But you've got to that point, so it's never, you're always going to be further than that point, if that makes sense. with a it's kind of not really like a straight road. It's kind of like really windy, but you're still getting to the same. You're always going to be in the same destination or going there, just on a different route. But yeah, a really couple crazy weeks for you.
yeah. It's been pretty sleepless. So yeah, looking forward to things settling down, just so we can.
You're reading your book about sleep to kind of sleep vicariously through your book.
Yeah, basically, that's the irony. Reading a book about sleep while not sleeping, and just being like, that's what I should be doing.
That sounds nice.
That sounds nice. Yeah, exactly. Too right. Oh man. So what's what's next for Ben Knapper? You know, you were now moving
Hollywood.
You're now moving into these like kind of interesting spaces that are, you know, quite different to the kind of work you were doing at BalletBoyz. You know, with, you know, Christopher Hansen's work being, you know, really these kind of like body dialogues, you know, as well as your kind of movement direction. You know, are these things that you want to explore more? Are there other things on the horizon that you're like, oh, I'm really interested in just getting into that a bit more?
Yeah, I feel, I'm excited to kind of see where this next little period of doing things differently will take me. I'm also very keen. I also know part of me is very keen to kind of go back maybe into like a rep company and kind of do rep again, because I do really enjoy that. That feeling. But I think it's really important for me to kind of gain these new skills and new experiences, and then have the option to kind of expand my horizons, if you will, and kind of whichever way I want. And that's what I think I'm most excited for. But most of all, I'm just excited to be in a studio for a while and just kind of do dance. I think at the moment I'm just kind of grateful for that, and anything that will lead me to be in the studio, and I'll take it. I'll take it.
I love it. Don't care how you get me there. Just get into the studio.
Get into the studio, literally. Yeah, pull up in that Uber outside the studio. I'm here. Yeah.
And they're like, we're not open. And you're like, oh.
I'll just wait outside. A week
early. I'll just dance out here. Don't worry about me.
Something that I would like to plug while on the top of a studio. My partner and friend have just opened up a studio space in Hackney Wicks that is available to be for rehearsals.
Awesome.
Studios, days, shoots and stuff. And that's called the Ample Space.
Ample Space.
Yeah, in Hackney Wicks. I just want to give that a little shout out.
That's awesome. Yeah, drop me the link and we'll put it in the description.
Yeah, great.
And people can check it out. So that's that space. Are you hoping to have? Is that going to be for classes, for rehearsals, for events? What's the hope for that space?
Yeah, so hopefully, like as things start to more gradually reopen, there are going to be more classes there. Professional class, hopefully, with different people, teachers.
Great.
I'm going to be teaching there in July. Which is going to be really fun. And then obviously people will be able to book it for their own rehearsals, studio days, shoots and whatnot. So yeah, kind of a new kind of great safe space for dancers of all kinds. And yeah, great. So get booking.
It's wonderful to like be able to create spaces like that, and to create spaces that, you know, is centered around kind of, you know, your own values as creatives and as dancers. And sort of what drives you, and and I think it's also a part of, you know, the ways in which we find new business models and new careers, new ways to use these spaces as kind of as things change.
Yeah, definitely. Really nice. Let's put it.
Awesome. Well, check that out. When can people check out your play? What is the play called that you're moving?
The play is called White Other, which comes I think from kind of, you know, those kind of, you're filling out a form, those kind of tick boxes on kind of that kind of sheet, and it's about these two sisters. They're both from Poland, and one sister moves to East London for around roughly 9 years, and then goes back to see her sister that she left in Poland at Christmas time, and it's kind of around the conflict of the relationship of them and their traditions and their family. So yeah, that's called White Other, and that'll be at Brighton Fringe Festival on the 24th, 25th and 27th of June. think.
Awesome.
Yeah. So please get your tickets.
It's interesting, like, yeah. So the plays really center around kind of like a kind of family drama, as it were, and this kind of
it's like
immigrant
kind of like this
experience.
relationship and kind of conflict of traditions, or kind of living in different parts of the world and having kind of different viewpoints around the same things. So or kind of coming from a place of having this viewpoint, going somewhere completely different, and then arriving back to someone who's not left that place, and kind of what arises from that. Are kind of all kind of tied into this kind of family. So and it's kind of just these two women who are in the play. So it's like a duet. I'm calling it a duet, a dancey duet. So yeah, I'm really excited to work with them both, and that'd be really great. Pole Vault Theatre Company.
That sounds dope. It's really interesting the ways in which, you know, places change us. You know, I think you know, I certainly have this experience, like, you know, moving around growing up, and you know, we often have this, like, where, you know, like moving to the States, and then you go home and people are like, oh, you sound so American, and then you go to America and people are like, oh, you sound like such a New Zealander, and you can kind of
pick up these phrases and these
and you're not always like self-aware of it yourself, but there's ways in which, you know, where we are shifts our perspectives in a way that's almost like tectonic, like it's almost sort of like underneath us. And it's only when we sort of like go back home or back to like other places that we're like, oh, actually, you know, I am different now, and like I have changed, and you know, and that's okay. And but like it is a process of almost like reconciliation sometimes that needs to happen in that kind of growing up and that journey as well.
Definitely very interesting kind of to see and experience, obviously.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ben, for joining us on the podcast, and
thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
It's been so nice having you on, dude, and like thanks for everything you've shared with us, all these like little nuggets of gold. And to the audience, if you're interested in Ben's work, both at Sadler's Wells as well as at Brighton Fringe, we'll drop links to that below, and check out Ample Space as well. And if you like the podcast, give it a like and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank